an aging population, or aging populations plural, and we are all experiencing similar challenges. They may vary from country to country, but at the end of the day, it's about the elder adults. So I'm delighted that we have with us Sam Magar, who is the Chief Executive of the University of the Third Age. And I have a personal hotspot for this organization. I came across them because my father, who's now sadly passed, was a carer for many years for my mother. And the University of the Third Age was a release for him. It was an opportunity for him to step away and do something he was absolutely passionate about. And that's how I discovered it. And I was reading the magazines, and then I reached out. And, you know, I've experienced something of the journey that U3A are currently going on, because the world of older adults is changing, and they are now looking to technology and digital as a necessary means of staying in contact. So, Sam, can I ask you to make yourself known? Thank you.
Yeah, so good morning, Ian, just about, and thank you very much for inviting me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
I can't see you. Is your camera off?
Okay, let's just see if I can work out how to do that.
At the top, or at the bottom actually, where it's a picture of the video.
Oh yeah, got you.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Yep,
great. Okay, yeah, so to go back again, thank you very much for inviting me today. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I'd like to say hello to the person from Ireland in the U3A who has said they're listening in. So, so hello to you too. Yeah, I'm the Chief Executive of the Third Age Trust, and we work with over 1,000 user-led, volunteer-led U3A charities across the United Kingdom, made up of 450,000 older adults, and they come together to pursue things that are interesting to them, everything from Japanese to walking, to dry stone walling, to ballroom dancing, you name it, they do it. And I'm also co-chair of the London Age Friendly Forum, which is working towards making London an age-friendly city. And I've worked in the age sector for the last 25 years, and including the older adults' voice as consumers rather than as service users is really important to me. So in other words, to look at the contribution of people as they age rather than look at older age as a deficit, and that is really important to me, that whole contribution approach. So can I move to the first slide, please? So I wanted just to start by going back to look at a few words that were mentioned by the Joseph Rowntree. So back in 2004, as you can see here, Joseph Rowntree said, older people are a diverse population. Their definitions of a life worth living and the support needed to achieve that should be paramount. Much policy and practice are still based on the assumption that older people are a burden, and this is problematic for older people and means resources fail to deliver their definitions of quality. And that was 16 years ago. What has changed? So can we go to the next slide, please? What we found recently in the U3A was, in a piece of research that we undertook, was that ageism is still very much prevalent, and people look at age very much through the same prism that they have for many years. And I think it's this that needs to be challenged, and I think we really need to start looking as older adults beyond the label older, and look at them as the people they are. So last year, the Third Age Trust, the U3A, wanted to find out about the experiences of people in relation to ageism, and to look at whether anything had improved or whether there is work still to be done. And so we questioned 1,000 older adults in the U3A movement, and we questioned 2,000 members of the public. And unfortunately, the experiences of the U3A members hadn't been that good in their own experiences outside of the U3A. So as you can see here, 2 in 5, 43%, had been on the receiving end of patronising language in relation to their age. And over a quarter had said that some terms that were used to describe them were very much outdated. And 2 in 5 said that they'd felt that they'd been addressed with names that were ageist. For example, with a very well-meaning intent, sometimes people would say, so the comments where I often get the comment, bless you, when talking to people, giving the impression that it's amazing that I've got any opinions. That was one quote that came out of the research. And another was, in a shop, I was addressed by an assistant. How are we so far today? As though I was lucky to get to the end of the day. However, these were some of the kinder comments that were made in the research we did. And what was concerning, I think, was the degree to which it was acceptable to see people as they age as somehow being necessarily in need. If I could go to the next slide, please. So those were the views of the U3A members. And then we did a survey of the general public, and 2,000 people took part. Over 53% admitted to regularly using words that older people felt were patronising. So 31% confessed to using the word fogey, 27% biddy, and 18% past it. Now, if you're a person that's lived if you're any person that's lived a longer life and have gone through many experiences, many of which will be important and valuable, and you will have done something in your life to contribute to your family or to others around you or to the local community, those being on the receiving end of those kind of words can feel quite bad, and can feel that you're not valued, and feel that your voice and what you've got to say isn't being considered. Can I go to the next slide, please? So I feel very strongly, and certainly the movement feels very strongly, that we really have to work hard to remove this ageism vision. So let's get rid of the ageism vision and see people as people, and then we feel we can achieve anything. So the World Health Organization has reinforced the importance of removing stereotyping from decision making and from providing services and products that people will use. So in other words, to remove assumptions about age and look beyond that, and as I've said earlier in this, to actually look as people. So we need to very much remove, as they have said, the pervasive ageist stereotypes of older people as being frail, burdensome and dependent, because they're not actually supported by evidence in society, and limit society's ability to appreciate how older people can contribute to our local communities. And this is very evident in the U3A. The U3A is made up of retired people who are not only very, very active in U3As, but also are very active in their local communities. So they will often be the people that are out, tidying up community gardens, helping in hospitals, helping in all kinds of ways to ensure that the local community works well as very much being involved in the U3A. They are the uniform people who want to get out and do things. Can I go to the next slide, please? I think the key thing I want to get across, aside from actually viewing people as older people as being people and very much contributors, is that actually people want to get involved. We know that people want to shape their futures. They want to be able to buy and use products and services because they want them and not because they need them. And it's interesting because if you ask any older adult whether they think they're an older person or who they think an older person is, I can guarantee you it won't be the person you're speaking to. If anything, it'll be somebody else. So every older person thinks of themselves as being active and contributing, and they don't feel that they're labelled by an age, be it 60, 70, 80, 90 or 100. So there is a key part of the conversation and delivery in terms of whether it's housing or services to older people, and that is that people need to be viewed as consumers and not as service users. Because if we actually start treating people as consumers and we ask people what they want, rather than start the conversation with what they need, then actually we're going to be providing people with products and services and housing indeed that they are going to use. And so the starting point, I think, is not necessarily thinking, let's start off with a service or indeed consider housing with the phrase older attached to it, but let's instead start that conversation by looking at a lifetime home, a home that you can stay in and live with and enjoy as yours. So I think the one important message is that housing products and services need to be desirable. We need to want them as well as being useful. And I think this is starting to, certainly in product development, this is starting to filter through, as I'll mention later. So if I could go to the next slide, please. So to recap, what I'd like to very much get across is that the first stage in developing any product or service is, of course, know your customer, know your audience. And yet this is often overlooked when it comes to anything being designed for older people. Older adults absolutely know what they want and they know how they want it. And this doesn't change just because we get older. People are very clear about what they want and how they want to use it. And older adults want to get involved. They want to say what they want. They want to say what they like, and they want to say what they'll use. So we really want providers to start speaking with older people seriously and respectfully, and most important, to listen to what they want, as they would do with any other kind of consumer. Next slide, please. So the House of Lords recently undertook a consultation, the House of Lords Select Committee, on COVID, Life Beyond COVID inquiry. And we had over 2,800 individual U3A responses to that. And one of the things that came out of that was technology. And learning to use technology such as Zoom has been absolutely life enhancing for people in our movement. U3A members who had never heard of Zoom, as indeed I'd never heard of Zoom prior to COVID, took to Zoom like ducks to water. So these are retired people of all ages. They were all there. They were all using the technology platforms to actually enable them to carry on doing what they'd already, what they'd been doing face to face for a long time. Of course, there were some people that couldn't use technology, but U3A members, being U3A members, rallied around those people and made sure that they used that they were contacted by telephones or had information posted through doors, or there were knocks on doors to speak in the gardens and so on and so forth. But so many took to Zoom, and so many to technological ways of keeping in contact with each other. The other thing that very much came out of it was, from a health and well-being perspective, the importance of their own positive action to change lifestyle, exercise regimes and eating habits. They felt that individuals should take responsibility for health and well-being, and this should be supported by the NHS and others. And there should be more investment in programs that assisted people to manage their own health and well-being. They felt very strongly that there is not enough of that, and there should be more support to enable people to know what they should do to support themselves. Next slide, please. So people will engage with policymakers and providers in the same way as any other consumer, no matter what age they are. And in the U3A, we regularly use focus groups for in-depth discussion. We have surveys and case studies. And for most surveys, we will achieve anything between 600 and 3,000 responders, because people are really interested and they will respond. It's getting to those people that are important. And although I'm speaking about the U3A today, there are a whole range of other voluntary and community organisations that liaise with large groups of older people aside from the U3A. For example, there's going to be organisations like Health Watch, the Royal British Legion, the Oddfellows, the WEA, just to name a few of them. I would say find those groups and speak to people, but ensure you really engage with them and really listen. The Age Agile Alliance has been magnificent, and Ian has done absolutely amazing work in engaging older adults in those huge conversations around housing, which is so important, and enabling organisations like mine to work with really large organisations like NatWest, opportunities we would never otherwise had. Because what Ian has done is he's taken off his glasses with age attached to it, and he so much is supporting the work of seeing older adults as any other adult and as being important to the conversation. So next slide, please. So I wanted just to take a moment to really stamp out the views that people may have with technology and older adults. And I would like people to say, and to begin with, making no assumptions about older and older adults, and instead actually start speaking with those adults, as I've mentioned before. So in 2019, we had a random sample of 3,200 members of U3As. They were randomly chosen very carefully so we could get a good statistical response. And 95% of members reported having internet access in their household. And 82% of those members said that they access the internet on most days. And as you can see there, 73% say they access their emails daily and so on. So what I wanted to really get across is don't assume that as people age, they won't actually use tech, because actually people's tech needs change and they evolve. And as I said before, U3As have really stood up to the need during COVID, and have used not only Zoom, but any other kind of technology that is available to them so that they can actually meet each other every day of the week all over the UK. And the average age in the U3A is 72. Can I go to the next slide, please? So what do people want? Well, I think part of the problem that historically is that anything to support a person has actually been made to resolve a problem. So instead of putting the person and what they need at the centre, actually aids and adaptations, for example, have been made to resolve a problem. And you'll have all heard this William Morris quote before, but I think it's really helpful. Have nothing in your house that you do not know to be useful or believe to be beautiful. And if I could take an example like a community alarm. So a community alarm is, as you know, a bracelet or a pendant, that's often provided to older people in case they have a fall. Many of those are left unworn, often because actually they don't look very nice, and so people don't particularly want to wear them because actually it labels them as an older person and the fact that they might fall. But some companies now have actually realised that, and they are actually looking as people, as consumers, and thinking actually, is there other ways to actually provide a similar product that's not just useful for older people but could be used for anybody? And so there are some companies that have actually taken the concept of a community alarm and the fall, and they're actually turning their product into a bracelet that looks very much like a Fitbit that I'm sure many of us wear, something like a Fitbit or something very similar. That also monitors whether or not someone's fallen, but in addition, whether how far they've walked and their blood pressure and other things like that. And that's an example of a company looking outside the box and looking at what someone might actually want to wear as well as its uses. And I think that is the new way we very much need to start looking at products as we go through our life course. If I could have the next slide, please. So just drawing into the question of housing and our home. So our home is probably the most personal and emotional investment made by most of us. And as I've said all the way through, being treated as a consumer is really, really important. So making sure a home is exactly the kind of home that someone will want to live in for their whole life or part of their life, I think is really important. And consumers look for standards and quality and safety. And that is very much about what the ISO conversation is trying to deliver. It's going to enable people to have homes that are age-friendly, intergenerational, and foster strong communities. Something we all want, no matter how old we are and what age we've achieved and where we live and how we live. And I think that I'm so pleased that the ISO conversation has been taken forward, that we have this huge body of people from all around the world who are supporting it. It's a recipe for good health and well-being, and we know that from the people that we've spoken to in our movement. So I would say that the ISO is everybody's business. We all have a part to play in making this a new reality. So whether you're an individual person who's a U3A member, or whether you are a policymaker, or whether you are a housing provider, it's all of our business and we all have to make it happen. Can I go to the last slide, please? I wanted just to leave you with a quote that describes what the U3A is all about, but I feel describes every older adult. The U3A shows the value of communities of interest and learning, which are not defined by age or past experience, but instead are defined by experiences still to be explored. And I wanted to give you that quote because no older person wants to be defined by their age, and they don't want to be defined by their past, but they do want to be defined by their future and the rest of their life to be experienced. So can we start by speaking with people on the basis of what they may want? Let's not make assumptions, but let's really start being aspirational. And thank you very much for letting me contribute today.
That's fantastic. Again, I would give you, I'm sure everyone, a huge round of applause. I've been looking at the commentary and it's been really positive. We'll find a way of getting more out there because we're running a bit late. I would, under normal circumstances, be putting a lot of questions forward. Instead of a question, I'm going to make a statement which is based upon experience of knowing you in the organization for a few years now. When we first came into contact, it was evident that the U3A was wed to physicality. You produce your quarterly magazine, kind of old school, which is fine. And for the audience, it was appropriate. I spoke about why are you not doing online connections? Because you wanted to get people to physically meet. And I think that it's absolutely essential. But in the practical world of where we are here and now today with COVID, etc., you've adapted. You're blending technology with physicality. So I just want to say it's incredible how quick it is as an organization that supposedly represents the elderly, how quick you are to adjust in an agile fashion to what the world needs and what your members are looking for. I think that the best I can get from you is, yes, that is what we are doing. And we will find a way of furthering this conversation because people really want to know more about what you're doing. So Sam, thank you very, very much